Hi, friends. So I wanted to make a video, but I also didn't want it to be edited. So, surprise, another live stream. I actually have one that's processing right now that's going to go live tomorrow. But yeah. If you guys hear like my fan in the background, sorry, it's like 1,000 degrees outside and I can't be bothered to turn it off. So, anywho, I wanted to make a video kind of explaining how I grew up sheltered. And I think that a lot of people just assume I had really overprotective parents or I grew up in a really small town or anything like that. But that's not really the case. And so I wanted to kind of like skim over it, but also give you guys like a better understanding of how I was brought up and why I don't even know how to explain it. Why I was sheltered, why I grew up in a really weird way, I guess. So I was born in Florida, and when I was 6, we moved to Illinois. When we were in Florida, we went to my grandma's church, which is Pentecostal. And hi, Gracie. It was kind of strict, but it wasn't necessarily my parents. That's the weird part. Rachel, no worries. I just started. So, hi, friend. So when we were in Florida, we went to my grandma's church, and she's Pentecostal. Her parents were elders in the church. My grandma was my Sunday school teacher. Like, my family pretty much ran the church. My dad used to be in a worship band when he was a teenager, and he was expected to kind of be a worship minister when he got older. And instead, he went down a different path and had his first child when he was 16. He got married around the same time and was, had 2 kids and was divorced by the time he was like 18, 19, something around there, which was very different than what my grandma had planned. And hi, Jamie. And so when we moved to Illinois, my mom was like, hey, there's this church that, my brothers went to. I know the pastor up there. He used to be our youth leader. And, why don't you kids go to that one? Because it's like the mid-90s. Like, church wasn't really like a controversial thing at that point. It was just like, let's all go to Sunday school. So we started going to this church, which prides itself on being an independent fundamental Baptist church. And I had zero idea what that meant because I was like 6 years old at the time. So I very quickly became a bus kid, which is just a kid who is reliant on the bus ministry. And the bus ministry, it could be buses, it could be vans, it could be just people who go and pick up kids in the neighborhood, bring them to church, take them home. So I grew up as a bus kid. Bus kids were kind of known for not like their parents not really being involved in the church, and they were known for typically being like poor. That sounds so bad, but typically bus kids were from like the bad neighborhoods. And it's not like I grew up in a really good area. I actually, for 10 years of my life, I lived in Markham, Illinois, which is really close to Harvey, Posen, Blue Island, Tenley Park. Like, Google it. Like, if you just Google Markham, Illinois, like, nice things are not going to come up. And it was a very sketchy neighborhood. But when we got up there, we started going to the local elementary school. And we, were just, I don't know, normal kids. We went to school, we went to church. That was, it. So after 3rd grade, my mom pulled me and my sibling out of public school to homeschool us. She got in like a fight with the principal or something happened. I don't know for sure. I get a different answer every time I ask my mom, so I legitimately don't know. But we were pulled out of public school so my mom could homeschool us. But about the same time, my grandma, who lived with us, she was bedridden. She got incredibly sick. And we kind of became caregivers for her in a way, which I completely understand is not a normal thing. But my siblings and I was 9 at the time, going on 10, and became somewhat of a caregiver for my grandmother. We, made her food. We, got her things that she needed. And my mom took care of like the really heavy stuff when she got home. So my social outlet at that point became church, and to have that kind of responsibility put on me at the age of like 9-10 years old is incredibly hard. Like I'm not sitting here trying to like make excuses for myself, but I really had to grow up very quickly and take on a lot of responsibility very quickly. So my social outlet became church, and I took about a year off to help with my grandma, to kind of focus on that because that was what was needed. And when I got back to church, it was right around, I want to say like the end of 2000, going into 2001, I had called up the church. I think they actually like came by because the bus route on Saturday mornings, they'll go around on the bus route. They'll knock on the door and say, hey, is Jess going to church in the morning? Yes, no, so they can determine their route. No, okay, we'll see you next week. If they say yes, they'll pick you up in the morning. So I hadn't gone to church in a while, and they came by and they were like, hey, we haven't seen Jess in a while. Can she come to church tomorrow? And my mom was like, yeah, I don't see why not. And so that fall, I went back to church. And going into 2001, my grandma got just super sick, and I was going to church Sunday morning. I was going, trying to go Sunday night. I was trying to convince my mom that I could go Wednesday nights. I was involved in helping out with the bus ministry as much as I could for a 10/11-year-old. I was working in the nursery. I was helping with VBS, which is Vacation Bible School. I was, involved in youth choir. Anytime the doors were open, anytime that there was something I could do, I was there. And I'm not trying to ignore the comments, but I'm trying to like focus, which is hard in case you haven't watched any of my other videos. Focus is a thing that I completely lack. So, that March, there was a particular weekend that my mom came and told us kids that, hey, your grandma's not going to make it through the weekend. I don't know how she knew that, if it was some kind of intuition or something. But that was really hard for me. My grandma was my best friend, which sounds stupid. But taking care of her all the time. We used to watch ice skating together all the time and cheerleading and things like that. And my grandma told me stories about when she was a kid. And so, my grandma had dementia. And if you've never encountered someone who has dementia, your brain basically goes in reverse. And about this time, she had the mental capacity of a 6-month-old baby. So she wasn't eating solid food. We were always I remember always having to like call ambulances for her. We would have to even know what those are for. I've never had the guts to Google it, so I don't know. But about this time, there were a couple of times that nurses would come in, and it was very strange, and I didn't understand. And this particular weekend, my mom called preacher. Anybody who's from this church, we don't call him pastor or anything. He's preacher. And my mom called preacher and my youth pastor at the time and was like, hey, can you come by and talk to, it's my mom's mom. So she's like, hey, can you come by and talk to my mom? And they came by, and preacher went in and he talked to my grandma for a little bit. My mom was talking about having him officiate her funeral, and a lot happened in the couple weeks leading up. But this particular weekend, my mom said, hey, she's not going to make it. Y'all need to go in and say your final goodbyes. And so that was an incredibly hard weekend. I was barely 11 years old, and, my grandma hadn't said anything in about 4 months. And so I went in and she was like, she hadn't recognized anybody. She hadn't said anything. She was constantly trying to bite my mom because she didn't know who she was. And I went in and I said, I love you, Grandma. I'll see you soon. And she said, I love you too, Jesse. And that was just like, so after that, the weeks after my grandma had passed away, preacher and the youth pastor brought like just a mess of food to the house. Like the grandmas of the church had got together and they had cooked us a bunch of food, what I like to refer to as funeral food. So a lot of pasta, a lot of salads. We had a ton of family come in, uncles I hadn't seen in years. My family is nowhere near being tight knit. I've got siblings that I haven't talked to in almost 10 years. So we are the furthest thing from the Brady Bunch. But they brought in a whole bunch of food. Easter came around. The grandmas of the church got together and they bought us Easter clothes to try to encourage us to come to church, to get loved on, which is just a thing grandmas of the church do. So this particular church that I grew up in is just A+ out of this world. I cannot speak highly enough of this church. I wish I could give out personal information without putting people at risk like that, but unfortunately I can't. But it's kind of ironic the church would be so outstanding for the area that it's in, because literally my preacher was shot in the butt. Like, I wish I could make that up. But I remember a particular summer I was going into youth group and it was all over the news. And we were like, that's not preacher, is it? And it was all over the news. Somebody came in to try to steal money from the church. Preacher was in the office. Preacher got shot in the butt. So there's a story for you. So yeah, after a while, we, in late 2005 was my year. But in late 2005, my parents started talking very heavily about moving back to Florida. And I was like, y'all could stop that right now, because I am living my life. I am here. I am established. I'm planning to, get my GED. I'm planning to go to Bible college. I'm planning on being a missionary to Japan. I've got all these plans and everything. And none of that happened. Because in early 2006, my parents took their tax return, threw it all into moving, which wasn't a whole lot. And we packed up the majority of our house, abandoned the rest. The house was torn down. It's not even there anymore. And we moved back to Florida for my dad's side of the family. And I called preacher and was like, hey, I want to find another church to go to. And obviously it's really hard to recreate the church that I grew up in, but I was hoping. If you've never been to the southern part of the United States, it's very religious. And that's putting it mildly. Not so much Florida as a whole, but Central Florida, from like Riverview to maybe like Lakeland, that area is very, very religious. And I was not expecting what I got when I went to the church that my preacher suggested. When the one preacher suggested, if I could just get my life together with my face. So this church, I don't want to give away any like identifying details, because I don't want anybody to go find this church. I don't want anybody to seek out this church. I don't want anybody to be like, that church sucks. But this church in particular, I became involved in very quickly. I was 16 at the time, and I called up the church and I started asking questions that a 16-year-old wouldn't normally ask about, like, what kind of Bible do you guys use? What kind of worship do you guys have? And things like that, which, I mean, most kids, 16-year-olds aren't going to church. Let's just call a thing a thing. I'm getting parched because this is really stressful for me. Also, I just want to point out that this is the most bogus water bottle I've ever seen in my life, but it was $1. It says it's artisan water. What does that even mean? Like, is it like fancy pants, like pinky up kind of water? Like, what is artisan water? Like, I know everything's like flipped backwards. One of these days I'm going to figure it out, but anywho. So I started going to this church, and the church was incredibly small compared to what I had grown up in. So the church that I grew up in had the big building. I don't know why we called it that, but it was the bigger of the two. So there was the big building and the little building. And the big building had the auditorium, and it had the basement. The basement had a bunch of classrooms, the nursery, tiny tots, a small kitchen, the bathrooms. And then the little building had a bathroom, some classrooms, and preacher's office. So going into this church in Florida, there was, like, you walked into the foyer, help me out, the front room, and there was like the bathrooms on the one side, the nursery on the other, and then you went through these double doors and it was just the sanctuary. I'm not sure why different churches call it different things. Like, I literally don't know. But there wasn't much beyond that. They played banjo a lot, like banjo and like stand-up bass and like guitar. So it was very different from the strictly piano, strictly organ church that I had grown up in. So I started going to this church, and my mom became increasingly concerned because of some of the things that they were teaching. And this is where it's like, my mom called it a cult. Because my mom called it a cult. And what I mean by that is, so when I was in Illinois, one of the things that they had taught us in youth group was girls are supposed to wear skirts and dresses and dress modestly. So no cap sleeves, no tank tops, no V-necks, no cleavage, no crop tops. Skirts have to cover your knee when you're sitting. I actually have a skirt that will sum all of this up. Also, if you know the Duggars, it's a lot like that. But let me get this skirt real fast. You guys are going to be like, that's out of control. So skirts like this are like standard, giant floor length denim, like actual floor length denim skirts. This is what I wore for like 4 years. No pants in Chicago winters, no leggings, just big, heavy denim skirts. So my mom at that point was like, that is brainwashing, and you're being taught something and you're following it even though you don't necessarily believe it. And I didn't understand. And when we got a new youth pastor, like it was like the year before I left, they had like a media cleansing where you would take like your tapes, because this was like the early mid 2000s. We still had tapes. You would take your tapes, your CDs, your VHS tapes. I think DVDs had like recently become a thing. You would take like your books, your whatever it was, and destroy it. And my mom was like, that is a questionable practice. So when I got to Florida, it became like a million times more strict. So I remember one time the pastor there said something about like, we don't need a generation of kids who look like they fell into a can of paint in their daddy's toolbox. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but that's literally what I look like now. A can of paint and my daddy's toolbox. Like, he was talking about like piercings, hair colors, like tattoos were a huge no. Any kind of hair dye, makeup was discouraged, but also encouraged at the same time. Like, you wanted to wear like a little bit of mascara and like a stupid amount of blush and like a little bit of like chapstick or something so that you looked presentable, but not like a hooch. Piercings, like you could have like your ears pierced, but I literally have size zeros right now. So like, fight me. I have 9.5 piercings and 3 tattoos. And the reason I say a half is because I got my belly button pierced earlier this year, but it rejected. So 9.5. So like just basically everything that I was as a person, like everything that I wanted to be as a person was completely incorrect. I wanted to wear pants, but I felt like it was wrong, like this weird social pressure that it was wrong to wear pants. I felt like, and this is what gets me, is being brought up in such a strict mindset. My parents are not like this. Like my parents literally do not care, like one way or another. They let us choose our religion. They let us choose for ourselves. I was baptized in the Baptist church when I was 14. So I chose that without really understanding what that meant. I'm just like all over the place. Like I was going to be coherent. This was the one day I was going to make sense. I was wrong. But yeah, they wanted you to look a certain way and dress a certain way and act a certain way. And I was brought up in this mindset that, you know, this is how I have to be. And it was also really hard because you're kind of told that like anyone in the LGBTQ plus community is just like a big old red flag, like blinking lights, red flag. Like do not disturb, like it's a problem, it's just for cause for commotion, like it's the worst thing a person can be. Like you can be a murderer and Jesus would forgive you. You could be a vegan or something. I don't know what's like a bad thing a person could be. Vegan's not bad, it's just I like cheese. I'm sorry, like I just can't. You could be, well actually in their eyes being vegan is bad because it's considered other, different, or weird. You could be, you know, a thief or whatever. Like Jesus will forgive you for all the things unless you're gay, in which case that's like the worst thing a person can be. And so to be brought up in this mindset that that's the worst thing a person could be is just jacks your brain. Which is, I've had to kind of adjust over the last like 10 years. I actually work with a couple people who are transitioning right now. And to me, it's like, I had to go to my boss and be like, okay, so is person A, what do they identify as? Because I don't want to outright ask, like, is that appropriate? Can you just ask? Or do you just ask them like what their preferred pronouns are? But like, I already kind of know them because I've been there a while. Like, what do I do? Like, I don't know. And she explained it to me. She's like, I really don't think they'd care if you ask, but this person is a boy and this person is a girl. And I was like, cool. But growing up in this church, that's not a thing that, you know, people could be or anything like that. And eventually I left that church and found, you know, other places to get involved in. I wish I had pictures of the things that I wore when I was at these churches. Cause I'm telling you, like the big skirts and like loose tops and culottes. Culottes were a thing, not just like a trend. It was a thing we wore at camp, like a lot. So fast forward a little bit, I found a different church. I went 1 year with them to camp as a camper, 1 year as a counselor. And I realized I shouldn't be counseling anybody. I'm just a jacked up human being. I should not be in charge of anybody, including myself. This is a problem. So yeah, it was like culture shock when I left the church, and my mom to this day will still tell me like, you put yourself in a cult, like you literally put yourself into a cult. And it got to the point that the first church that I went to in Florida, they were actually on the news because their buses were vandalized. And I believe one was actually set on fire because there was so much hate towards this church. And they're, I want to say more Southern Baptist leaning, where they like shout amen and they like run the aisles. And I was in choir, like I've been in choir my whole life. And I was in choir and we would do these, what are they called? We would do mashups. What am I doing with my life? We would do Jesus mashups. Oh, I think it's called a cantata or something. Like it's usually for Christmas, but we would do them every service. And so we would go and we would have rehearsals on Wednesdays. We would have rehearsals on sometimes Sunday evenings, depending on what was needed. If it was a revival meeting or a camp meeting, or a missionary was coming in, we would have to do more practices. We would have to do more songs. And it became like something that really overtook my life. But my mom knew that I'd always been in choir, so that wasn't really a big deal. The thing that made my mom tell me to leave the church was that when I was around 16, I was so overwhelmed with not understanding, like I had an internal battle between like what I thought and what I had been taught my whole life. And so I went through like I don't want to say like an identity crisis or something, but I went through a really difficult, I'm so sorry. I just smacked my mic. I went through a really difficult time with my mental health. That's when everything kind of started like spiraling out of control. So when I was 16, I started cutting, and like the people that were picking me up for church noticed that I was like crying a lot. After services, it was like 100 degrees outside, and I was like wearing like hoodies, like genuine hoodies and like long sleeves. It's the middle of summer. It's Florida. It's disgustingly hot outside, and I'm wearing like actual sleeves. And so she took me to the pastor's wife, because in this church, you couldn't go directly to the pastor. Women had to go to the pastor's wife, and men could go directly to the pastor. Gender roles are very heavily emphasized in fundamental Baptist land. So we went to the pastor's wife, and she started doing like counseling, I guess, on Wednesdays before choir practice. So I was gone from the house like way more than I should have. And my mom didn't know at the time what was going on, and I was not going to tell her. And she was like, you need to get out of that church. It's taking over your life. It's turning into a cult. And she had interacted with some of the people there a few times, and she said she just got like a vibe, like she was just super uncomfortable. So eventually I went to a church that was around the corner from my house. It was actually where I got my first job, was working at the daycare that was ran by the church. And I started going there, but I didn't get as involved because there really wasn't anything to get involved in. The church was good sized, but the majority of the church was the pastor's family, and there like really was no youth group. There was no choir. There was nothing to get involved in. But that church was where I did my first solo, which I regret every second of that. It was during a missionary conference, and I was like, I know everything and I can do this. I've been in choir for years. And I got up there and I just wanted to cry, and it was absolutely horrifying. And eventually I switched churches. I need to stop hitting my computer. I switched churches again and started going to it was still a Baptist church, but it was not really, not as strict. I wore pants all the time. I actually have a picture from it. I don't know where I was wearing like boots with capris. Actually, I wonder, do I have that picture still? I think I have that picture. Let me go see if I have that picture. Hold on. I love embarrassing myself on the internet, in case you didn't like pick up on that. Are you guys digging my PJs? Obviously, I rebelled really hard because I wear shorts. So let me see if I have a picture of this. Oh, okay. So one of the other things that happened when I was in Illinois is we went to church camp, and we all wore bandanas. Like we literally stopped at a Walmart on our way to camp so we could buy bandanas because we didn't want like our head to get like sunburnt or whatever. And I remember in 2005 when we went, the camp was actually closing down, and that was the last year that the camp was going to be open. I guess it's reopened since then, but this was the last time the camp was going to be opened as far as we knew. And I had on, it was like really cold that morning. So I had on one of those shirts that looked like a short sleeve shirt over a long sleeve shirt, but it was one shirt. And I had a bandana on and like a long khaki skirt. And I was called out in the middle of morning devotions for trying to dress like a boy. Called out in front of everybody. And I still to this day will not forget, like it was morning devotions. It was like towards the end of the week. It was like Thursday, I think. Thursday or Friday. It was like literally at the end of the week. And this lady gets up there and she was like, you need to go back to your cabin. You need to change. You're trying to be a cross-dresser. You're trying to look like a boy. The Bible says this. The Bible says that. And I was like, are you talking to me? This is not like, could you just have a one-on-one conversation with me instead of calling me out in front of like 200 other people? It's cold outside. Okay. Back up. I don't have time for that. So anywho, let's see. I was looking for that picture from, it was like a play that we did. And I don't know if I have it. I don't think I do. This is all my pictures from like Vegas. Which, by the way, was very fun. Would not recommend going back, though. It was disgustingly hot. I have never been so sweaty in my whole life. It was gross. So let's see. I think I'd be prepared for stuff like this, but you wrong. You very wrong. Yeah, I don't think I do. I think it's just like on Facebook or something. I don't think I can show it anyways because it has other people in it. And I think at least one person in that picture was technically a minor when we took the picture, which I think is against the YouTube guidelines. Like you can't show minors in your video, but I don't know if that means minors in pictures or does that mean minors in person? Somebody help me out because I genuinely cannot be bothered. We were a bunch of hot messes, to be honest. Yeah, I don't have it. At least not here. But I do have like an absolute like gem of a picture that I will share with you guys just because I don't want to disappoint nobody. But I'm sure my whole channel is a disappointment to everyone, so it's fine. That's from 2005. That is the level of hot mess we were talking about. Bucket hat. I had fishnet gloves. Y'all, them fishnet gloves, though. I was already rebelling. I had like, how many? Oh, I just had one necklace on, but I had many, many bracelets. Many, many bracelets. One girl came to me one time before church and she was like, give me your bracelets. I'll give them back to you when we're done. And I was like, why? And she's like, you have on too many bracelets. I literally had on 37 jelly bracelets on one arm because I was already rebelling like so hard. You guys. Telling you, Hot Mess Express. I drive that bus. So NTU. Hold on. I've had this bottle for like 4 days. It's not really artisan water anymore. It's tap water or faucet water, I guess. But yeah, I eventually started going to a more relaxed church, but at that point I was like 20 and there was nothing for me to get involved in. There was no 20-something group. It was a very small church and that was not going to happen. I left that church when I got engaged and Jonathan and I really didn't go to church very often. And when we did, we went to his church, which is Lutheran, which is very, very scary. I get very uncomfortable around like Catholic churches and Catholic imagery. I don't know why. It just has always given me the heebie-jeebies. Maybe it's because like in spooky movies, when like something happens, it's always like a Catholic, like the exorcism of Emily Rose kind of thing. It's always like exorcisms are part of the Catholic Church. You know, it's a thing. It's always freaked me out. And so to be in a Lutheran church where it's like Catholic Junior is kind of just as scary. And then after that, I went to a church in Colorado for a while. I tried to get involved with the college group, but it was not for me. I didn't feel comfortable there. I didn't feel like it was the place for me. And then I stopped going to Arkansas. I was going to a Baptist church out there. And then it was fine. There wasn't really anything for me to get involved in. There was like a 20s and 30s class, but everybody was like married or had kids. And I'm over here like, can't relate. And then in Fayetteville, I went to a non-denominational church, which was all right, but it wasn't really, again, it wasn't anything I could like really get involved in because it was such a huge church, and it was a small group church. So they're more focused on small groups, and they had like different sites for the church. And so you were never like in just one building. There was like different sites that you could go to. It was very weird. I've gone to a couple other churches in Florida, but I don't know. One I think was like a Hillsong church. And I mean, that was fine. But again, there was nothing I could really like get involved in. And growing up being so involved in the church and then having nothing is like, I'm gonna just sit here because I don't know what else to do. I think a lot of churches kind of cater to either kids/teens, or they cater to like families. And so it's hard when you are a single 20-something, single 30-something to get involved with a church. And I don't know that I would again. I've looked at churches in my area, but there really aren't a whole lot. And I'm trying to find something that has like an early service because I work Sundays, but trying to find something that has an early service is like really difficult. And also I've been looking into not being Baptist anymore, which is very strange. I've always been fascinated by like other cultures and other religions and stuff like that. So I wanted to look into other things and find out, do I believe what Baptists believe because it's something I actually believe, or do I believe what Baptists believe because it's something I was taught to believe? Which is hard to take a step back and kind of examine your belief system and examine how you were raised and really start questioning things. And I know I've addressed this in another video, but I wanted to be like more in depth about it and like really actually talk about it, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, social anxiety has to do with how you were brought up and blah, 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 and whatever. But literally, I lack communication skills. I lack social skills, because that's stuff that you develop in school and talking with kids and having to address conflicts and things like that. But when you are homeschooled and your only outlet is church, and you're a female who's told, girls don't speak up in the church, you have a problem with somebody, that's your problem. But you don't really address anything. You kind of learn to just be very quiet and just kind of exist and just mind your own business. And it's really difficult to question everything, like objectively question everything, and not just want to be like, but the church said this and the preacher said that. It's really hard to look at things from a different perspective. So I've looked into like Catholicism, I've looked into Mormonism, I've looked into more in depth into Baptists, I've looked more in depth into Lutherans, I've looked into a lot of different things, and I don't find that my personal beliefs really line up with anything that I found so far. I have a really hard time kind of addressing everything at once, and yeah, it's been a journey. But even last year, like, I was talking to my old youth pastor and was telling him, like, I really don't know what I believe. And he was like, but you know what the Bible says, like what's right and what's wrong and whatever. And I was like, that's your opinion. Do you know if I paid attention in class? Because the answer is probably not. And from the time that I was 19 to the time I was 22, I was really heavily involved in substance abuse, specifically prescription pills, because at the time I was being given way too much medication for what I needed. And so I just started abusing it. And I went to church high more times than often or more times than not. And I honestly, I don't remember a lot from that time. I lost basically like 3 years of my life. Like I just straight up don't remember it. So yeah, it's not that I'm trying to like make excuses for like my anxiety or like how I interact in social situations. It's literally because I want people to understand where I'm coming from. I want people to understand I don't view anxiety as an excuse for anything. I don't view it as a justification for anything. And this is the why, is because it's not just that I have, anxiety and trouble in social situations. It's the fact that I literally grew up in what my mom refers to as a cult. Fundamental Baptists are often seen as having a cult-like mindset because of them telling people like how they should dress, telling people how they should act, telling people essentially what they should think and do and say. And I don't fault Preacher for that. He's absolutely one of the sweetest people I've ever known in my entire life. And they really did help us through the death of my grandmother. But I absolutely cannot be involved in that. If for nothing else, I can't wear skirts all the time. My thighs are really in love and it's painful. And I just need them to get divorced like so bad. And I just can't go back to wearing all skirts all the time. Like, it's so strange when I see people that I grew up with, like they'll wear like cap sleeves or even tank tops in the summer. And I'm like, don't you, like, in my head, my instant reaction is like, don't you know better? Like, what are you doing? Or people who like wear leggings under their dresses or under their skirts. I'm like, what? Leggings? Like leggings are the worst. Like leggings are the worst thing a girl can wear. Like it's just like right up there with like wearing a crop top. Like girls don't wear leggings. Toddlers wear leggings to like maintain their modesty, which how does a 3-year like determine the modesty for a toddler for me? Please explain that one to me, because I got some questions. Leggings is one of the worst things like a grown woman can wear, because it's like you're basically saying, oh, I don't have to keep my legs together because I have leggings on. That's kind of like the mindset of like why leggings are bad. But legit, I wear leggings to work so much. Like I wear tops that like cover my butt because I'm like I still have like some of that stuff like ingrained in me, but I make sure like everything is like significantly covered. So yeah, that's the story of how I grew up in essentially a cult. I would encourage you guys to do some objective reading on Fundamental Baptist to kind of better understand where I'm coming from, because I cannot address 20 plus years of information in like a short stream. But let me just go through the comments real quick, because I was not trying to ignore them, but as soon as I start talking about my grandma, I'm like, hold on. So Jamie, I agree. That was a lot for all of us to handle. My younger siblings don't remember, but I definitely do. And yeah, I actually have a picture on my wall of my grandma when she was healthy. It's in like a 2 picture frame. I don't know what I'm trying to accomplish here, but there's like a picture on the top, picture on the bottom. So the top picture is my grandma when she was healthy, and the bottom picture is me at my GED graduation. And I have a necklace of hers with one side is pray hands and the other side is the serenity prayer. And I have it hanging off of the picture frame so that like my grandma's always with me and always watching over me. Hey, friend. So yeah, I don't think I ever necessarily like let my grandma go. I still hold very tightly to her memory. So y'all gonna make me cry again. Thank you for sharing. I was raised Catholic and had some bad experiences with church/religion. I now practice pagan witchcraft. It feels so good to be free of the strict rules of religion. I did look into paganism is it paganism? I don't know. I did look into pagan witchcraft and things like that for a short period of time. And there's a lot of bits to that. Like, I don't know. That's not something I can't pay attention. There's too many pieces. Let's see. What state are you in now? I live in Colorado. I live in like the Denver area, generally speaking. I would love to be like, oh, I live in blah, 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 but I don't want my ex Daniel to find me like at all, which is part of the reason I don't give out any like personal information. I don't give out locations. I don't tell people where I work. I don't tell people where I live. I got some fears. And not just him, but there's like other people that I don't want them to know like where I live. It means it comes from a pressurized well, the artesian water. What is a pressurized well? Like I grew up with well water. Like we actually had like a pump house in our front yard. I was about to go look and see if I had a picture of that, but I'm like, all you're going to see is like a blue tarp over a triangle in my yard. It's not that exciting. No leggings under either. No, I explained that. Leggings are like the worst thing that a person could wear. For sure. Let's see. I'm trans and my religious side of my family refuses to acknowledge me. That is like, I'm not surprised. That's sad. And I wish that people would understand that like your gender identity or your orientation, or if you want to identify as a pine cone, like it literally doesn't matter because it doesn't define who you are as a human being. Either you're a good person who does good things or you're a bad person who does bad things. But what you self-identify as and what your orientation, your gender, or your gender orientation and like your sexual orientation, it's not a defining characteristic, just as much as like a disability, a mental illness, a health condition. They don't define a person. You are who you are. In some Native American tribes, which is something that my papa had told me growing up, is that there's this thing called Two-Spirit, where I believe it's if you are, I want to say how he interpreted it was if you're bisexual, it's considered Two-Spirit. But I think my nanny interpreted it as if you were trans. They had weird, like conflicting, like within each other, conflicting beliefs. So one person I'd hear one version, one person I'd hear the other. So I literally don't know. But Two-Spirit is considered like a really honored thing. So I would look into that and, get some inspiration from that. But yeah, let's see. What's a culotte? Okay, so a culotte is literally, it's a split skirt. So if you took a skirt and like cut it up the middle and sewed it exactly how it is, that is considered culottes. I wish I had a pair, but I don't, because I don't like, I don't have a reason. I think I left them all in Florida or gave them away or something. I literally don't know where they are. Imagine basketball shorts that fit real good in the waist, but the crotch is like 4 inches lower than it should be. And the legs are like 8 times wider. That is culottes. And they come like way below your knee, like mid calf. That is culottes. Not like the trendy, like flowy, like capri pants that we had in like 2003, like the Lizzie McGuire pants, but like exactly how I described it, because I'm not doing that again. Let's see. It's like shorts with a skirt altogether. Skirt with built-in shorts. Ugly and very old-fashioned, like from the 70s. That's actually I don't remember what it's called, but it's skirts. Clever name. You'd think I could remember it, but you were wrong. It sounds like you're describing skirts, which was like shorts with a skirt like built around them. That is incorrect. I used to have a pair of skirts that I was like really into, but since the butt side was shorts and the front side was a skirt, I couldn't wear them to church. It was like a big old no-no. And I loved them because it came like right above my knee and it was white. And I used to wear them with like these white platform sandals and like a white, like 3/4 sleeve shirt and like a green vest. And I just looked like everything wrong with 2003 spring. spell check, like Google will argue all day long about how to spell culottes, which I think it's Coulottees, something around there. I couldn't tell you. I can't be bothered. Let's see. I'm old enough to be the mom here, but when I was in my teens, I went through a period of trying out religions. I went to every Christian church I could find, Catholic and Protestant, and ended up where I am now, spiritual but not really religious. I think it can be a challenging thing to try to find the way that has meaning for you. I definitely agree, and it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, my Bible is still KJV, but the one on my phone is NIV, which is King James Version and New International Version, just because the NIV is easier for me to read, but KJV is what I grew up with. So all the verses that I have memorized, like in my head, are KJV. And actually, the church that I went to in Florida, the first one, the really, really strict one, they actually gave us a challenge, like when I first got there, to memorize the first chapter of John, which I still to this day have memorized. Like they want us to memorize whole chapters of books whole chapters of books, because apparently the devil can't infiltrate your mind if it's full of Bible verses or full of scripture or something like that. I don't know. I'm 33 and I grew up in a split family, half Catholic, half Jew. Oh, I thought that's a Jewish. That's not correct. Half Catholic, half Jehovah's Witness. And like you, Spectre, which is the person who is now spiritual but not religious. I am more spiritual, kind of go with what I'm comfortable with. See, my family was split too between like Baptist and Pentecostal, and my parents just let us decide, which I think that's a lot of responsibility to put on a child to decide a religion. But I also understand why my parents didn't force us to be one religion or another. It was because they didn't want to influence our decisions and influence like who we became, essentially. Those gloves. I know. And I wore them all the time. Didn't matter if it was church, youth activities, them gloves though. They actually came from a bubblegum machine. Like, believe it or not, those gloves came from a bubblegum machine. It's funny because like stuff like that's coming back now, but it's coming back like through Hot Topic. Ugh. Can we just like forget that ever happened? Let's see. I just want to make sure I like address everybody's questions. I'm tired of my videos being stupid long, but I don't want somebody to like post something and then be like, but wait, I had a question. Let's see. I grew up Catholic, so yes, agree, LOL. It is creepy. See, everything that's like associated with like the spooks, like exorcisms and, you know, hauntings and things like that, does it or does it not always seem to happen within like the realm of Catholicism, like either in a Catholic church or the family was Catholic or whatever? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but am I wrong? You never see stuff like that going down like a Baptist church or like a Methodist church or anything like that. It seems to always come from Catholic, the Catholic realm. I don't want to say Catholic people necessarily, because I don't think it's like Catholic people necessarily, but I do think a lot of the spooks come from Catholic churches and like that whole world and everything. Yeah. And why is Jesus always like hanging on the cross, like dying? Like I understand that like the imagery is supposed to remind us of like his sacrifice and all of that. But does that ever like bring anybody down where it's just like you have this image of somebody who, while fully God, was still fully man, dying? Does that not like hurt anybody else's feels, or is it like literally just me? Because the way that I was brought up, we didn't have images of the crucifixion. We had images of the bear cross because Jesus isn't on the cross anymore. That was like the whole reasoning, was like, he's not there, he's risen. And so why are we looking at him dying when we could look at the, the risen cross? I don't know. Maybe that's why it bothers me. I don't know, but it's always given me the spooks. I don't know why I've got to flail so much. It's really obnoxious. I was raised a Southern Baptist, and the hypocrisy, do as I say, not as I do, is why I went on the great religious search in my 20s. And that's kind of where I've been at, is that it was a lot of do what I say, don't question why I say it. And that really, really bothered me, where it was, here's a bunch of rules, but let's not tell you why they're rules. So one Saturday morning, which if you remember ABC's One Saturday Morning, We Can Be Friends, because that was a long time ago. So one Saturday morning, I was going with the, I want to say the teen female group, because like Saturday mornings, like the teens were split up into like boys and girls, and then sometimes we would have a teen activity in the afternoon, which could have been like go-karting or something, or it was like Friday nights in the summer or whatever. So this particular Saturday, we were going to what I can only refer to as an options clinic, where it wasn't necessarily an adoption agency, but it definitely was not an abortion clinic because Baptist. But it was almost like a pregnancy crisis center kind of thing, like a pregnancy counseling center. And we would go there and we'd volunteer, and we would do like filing for them. We would do like putting together different like brochures and like care packages and stuff like that. And we got in the van, and it was snowy outside. And I was wearing jeans, my favorite bell-bottom jeans, because I was an absolute hippie child. And the leader of the group, she turned around before we left the parking lot, and she was like, hey, just so you know, if you're going to come with us again, you have to wear a skirt, because you're representing the church and you're representing like what we believe in. And so if you're going to be with us and you're going to represent the church, then you need to wear a skirt. And I was just like, I just wanted to cry. Like I was like 13 and I was being called out in front of all these people. And I was just like, okay. I didn't question it. I didn't feel like it was okay to question it. It was just what everybody did. So, you do what everybody else is doing, essentially. And then like for Christmas banquet, I guess everybody dressed up for the Christmas banquet, but I went in like a yellow t-shirt and like a khaki skirt. And my friends were like, why aren't you dressed up? And I was like, why are you dressed up? We're just kicking it. Like we're having dinner. There's lasagna. Like why are we sitting here trying to wear like fancy borderline prom looking Christmas dresses? Like last time I checked, Jesus didn't care that we were dressed a certain way. So I'm gonna just leave that there. Yes, it was very back and forth. My mother's side, the Jehovah's Witness side, refused to see me until I was like 3 because my mother was disfellowshipped. I've actually been watching videos on Jehovah's Witness a lot. One of the kids that used to be in my youth group recently became Jehovah's Witness, and I am very, very concerned because he seems to have just like dived in, homeschooled. He seems to have just like jumped right in without really like questioning anything or like doing his own research. And I think that's like really, I don't want to say dangerous, but I don't know what other word to use. I feel like it's really questionable. Like you want to take a step back, look at it, observe it, do your research, and then get involved rather than be like, I like this church, I'm going to be friends with this church. This is my church. And you're not really like, he claims that he was baptized into the Baptist church, but he claims that he didn't know that the Baptist church believes in the Trinity. And I'm like, literally, you were there on Easter And that's all anybody talks about is God the Father sent God the Son, who was guided by God the Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit, however you want to word it, through his ministry, died on the cross, rose again. That's the gospel in a nutshell. Like, we talked all the time about the Trinity. Like, how did you not know? He was probably not paying attention either. I'll be honest. None of us were. Let's see. I don't think it sounds like you're making excuses. You're just telling your story. My story is strange. Let's not fight it. My story is weird and complicated, but I've got stories on stories for days that you guys would not believe. Also, I'm really sorry about my face. I know it's really obnoxious to look at because I make a lot of faces, but I do it at work too. And somehow people keep coming back to see me. And I'm just like, cool. Let's see. We had Catholics and Baptists, and there were arguments, but we all had dinners and stuff. Just really uncomfortable a lot of the time. And religion wasn't talked about much with certain family. And I understand that. I actually have a lot of people in my family who are agnostic and atheists now because we all grew up in the same church and we all grew up, for the most part, Pentecostal. And then for me and my siblings, Baptist. And I never felt comfortable even just talking to my parents about religion. I didn't even want to tell them when I was getting baptized. I didn't want to tell them when I was like involved in stuff because I felt like I was going to like be judged, even though my parents legitimately don't care. Like it's not to say they don't care because they're like mean, but they legit, like, I'm an adult. They don't care. On a lighter note, I love your nail polish. Thanks. I actually really don't like it. It looks like nail fungus yellow, and I just want to take it off, but I'm trying not to be gross about it. It's a Sinful Colors polish. Hold on. So I put the base coat that I used was Baby Doll from Ulta, but I feel like they don't make nail polish, like regular nail polishes anymore. I don't know. They might be online, but I can't find them in store. And the yellow is from the Citrus Twist collection from Sinful Colors, and it is Ring the Bellini. So these two together. I thought this was going to be more orange, but it just looks like underripe orange peels. I was really hoping it was going to be orange. All right, let's see. What happened with Daniel? I'm a new subscriber. So if you're wondering who Daniel is and the situation with that, go back and watch my What Happened in Fayetteville video because it's literally too much to get into right now. This has already been an hour, and I'm really, really trying to not be that person who's always like, here's a 30-minute video. Here's a 45-minute video. Here's an hour-and-a-half video. Like, I'm tired. I need to take my meds and go to bed, but I just want to address everyone. I just want to be a helpful little buttercup. This live chat bar is over my text bar and I can't see what I'm typing. Does that happen? I don't know because I don't type into the chat. I mean, I very rarely do. Let's see. What did her mom call a cult? To summarize, the church that I grew up in. What did I miss? Everything. You missed everything. Let's see. What was the church called? I would love to tell you what the church was called. However, for safety reasons, I don't feel that it's appropriate. So I will just tell you that it was an independent fundamental Baptist church. Independent meaning that they don't have another governing body that they answer to, such as the American Baptist Association or the Southern Baptist Conference. They answer to themselves. Votes are taken within the church to determine things like if a new building is to be built or if a new member is to come in. And then the fundamental part, I legitimately don't know why it's called a fundamental church. Let's all conspire together because I don't know. That was never explained to me. Let's see. I would say it doesn't happen in Protestant churches. Catholics, Wiccans, native religions all deal with spirits and such. Yes. But I feel like in some spooky movies, it's about to be Halloween time. Spooky movie time. I feel like it's always Catholic church, but like, except for Hocus Pocus, which that's my jam. Kind of related to Wiccans because it is technically witches, but I don't know. I don't really like equate the two things together for some reason. Growing up, I was like secretly just obsessed with like the Salem witch trials and like murder mysteries and stuff like that. I still am. I don't know what's with me. Let's see. Oh, Jamie, you have to go. Bye, friend. We'll see you soon. Let's see. You're just super animated. It's great seeing emotion nowadays. So my ex-fiance's cousin actually got into a fight with me on Facebook one time and told me that I look like an anime character. And I was like, I was really excited. But yeah, was that an insult? Was that like a burn? I look like an anime character? Which one? I got questions. My glasses make my eyes look really big. So I think that might be like my eyeballs are actually normal sized eyeballs. Ooh, my eyeshadow are patchy. That's uncomfortable. Oh, got stuck in my hair. I'm very particular about how I put my glasses on, by the way. Just a little FYI in case you want to know stuff about me that's not relevant. Are you a Jehovah? I think you're referring to Jehovah's Witness, and no. And could not be because of some things that I've recently learned about Jehovah's Witness. I can't support that. It's not my place to really like put it out there. I think if you are curious about things, you should definitely go do your own research, but I'm not going to sit here and speak on things that I have not personally been involved with. What do you think of the church? You're going to have to clarify a little bit. Lachelle, is it Lachelle? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm really bad at pronunciations. Do you mean like big old like Hillsong churches, or do you mean just big church? Like what do you mean exactly? Let's see. Me neither. Have a nice bagel. I have bagels in my fridge, but they're gluten-free, so they suck. What's your experience been like being in a youth group? So that is a very simple question with a very complicated answer. The OG. I really enjoyed my youth group. I had a lot of fun with my youth group. However, I know that not all youth groups are created equal, and not all youth pastors are created equal. We had one that we, in later years, referred to as Dougie Fizzle. And he and his wife were just top-notch people. They're honestly some of the greatest people I've ever known. And I look back on my years with this youth group very fondly, which I've questioned, like, is it one of those like Stockholm syndrome kind of things where it's like the person who abused you, you only have like good memories of? But I was never abused at this church. I got bullied because kids suck, but I wasn't like mistreated or anything like that by like adults. I remember a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of really emotional times with the youth group. I remember everybody having like cliques because that was the thing to do. But I don't necessarily have any like bad feelings towards the church. I don't have any bad feelings towards the youth group. The majority of the kids that I was there with are now married and have children, like some combination of that. And yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it, but I think if the youth group continuously has things going on like every week that the kids can get involved in, I think it's a really great thing, and an alternative to after school programs if you don't want to put your kid in an after school program. But yeah, instead of like doing sports or things like that, I don't know. I went to youth group. We had like prom alternatives, we had homecoming alternatives, we had like many, many outings. We went on missions trips. We went all kinds of places, and it was a good time. Let's see. Would you get married by the church? When you say by the church, do you mean by the Baptist church, or do you mean by the church meaning like the Catholic church? Because no to the Catholic part. But I don't know. If I could have preacher like officiate my wedding, I would. But when I was engaged and I called him and was like, "Can you do this?" He was like, "You should really have the pastor of your church now officiate your wedding. That's what's appropriate. That's what's proper." But I was like, "We don't go to church." So it was like, yeah, that wasn't an option. My comment about love it went to your facial expressions, not the mega churches. My face is my face. I'm sorry. And I don't necessarily have any feelings towards mega churches. I feel like if it's a mega church that's mega sucking up your money, then that's a problem. If it's a mega church that's like mega involved, then like that's cool. But you really have to watch out for like false teachings and things like that. That's when it gets kind of sketchy. Definitely if the pastor, preacher, minister, whatever, if they're saying things that are seeming a little sketch, do your own research. Look into the verses yourself. Look at the verses around what they're talking about. Look into the context, specifically the historical context, and kind of judge for yourself. I don't think mega churches are bad, but I think the majority of them are askew. Good night, Brandy. We'll see you soon. Bye, friend. What's the difference between getting married by the Baptist church and the Catholic church? So Baptist church, Catholic church, I'm sure they have some, the only word I have is ritual. I'm sure they have something specific that they do for their weddings, because I recently went to a Catholic funeral and it was very orchestrated, very ritualistic. And I know these sound like bad words, but I don't mean them in a bad way. It's just the only vocabulary I have for this right now. Baptist churches, it's more like a standard run-of-the-mill wedding, except the reception, there's no alcohol, there's no dancing. There is basically like a buffet, and you go and you sit and you eat for like a couple hours, and that's about it. It's really not that exciting. Except for the one that I was in the choir for. That one was strange just because there was so much emphasis. There was such a focus on music. Why am I incapable of connecting my brain to my face? There was such a focus on music, and we ended up singing for like 2 hours. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do like a 2-hour choir concert, but it's exhausting. And to be just a 16-year-old at the time and not really have like the training to go into something like that, it was a lot. So that is where I'm going to cut off questions for now. If you have any more, leave them down below. I feel like this is something a lot of people can either relate to or they have questions about, and I will do my diddliest to help with your questions. But please know I'm not a scholar. I didn't go to Bible college. I would not get accepted into Bible college if I tried. I've got piercings and tattoos, and they don't look kindly on that. And my hair is blue. So that part. So anywho, it's been great talking with you guys. It's been great to be able to share a little bit of my story to kind of give you guys some background on the why. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye.